Welcome to the Black History Month Roundtable presented by Central Outreach Wellness Center. We're joined today with my Black colleagues to talk about the Black experience at Central Outreach, what it means to us to work through the community, and how the Black perspective shows up in our daily life here at Central Outreach, and what that means to us in our work. I really wanted to ask, how do you celebrate it?
I celebrate Black History Month probably like every month, but like especially during Black History Month, I get excited. So I'm like, let me see what I don't know or what I can find out.
What do you mean you celebrate Black History Month every month?
I feel like I am Black history. So I celebrate my victories. I am the first provider in my family. I get to go around and educate people on health and wellness, and I get to be a safe face when it comes to healthcare. So that's how I celebrate.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. McGowan?
I think I primarily celebrate by just keeping in touch with my family, discussing things that have happened in the past, things about our history. My family is originally from Alabama. They're sharecroppers, so they're farmers. And then to think about how maybe some of the things that they experienced or they accomplished during their lifetime impacted me. So for instance, with coming from a family of sharecroppers, everyone knows I'm really big on nutrition. And my two grandmothers were actually, they had a restaurant together. One was a cook, the other one was a server, and they would trade back and forth. And so I think some of that being of service in terms of nutrition from that standpoint is something that I kind of celebrate and reflect upon during Black History Month.
Our history and some of our struggle was not too long ago. Some people think that it was hundreds of years ago. They might trivialize that as something that we should move on from, but how can you, like I said, contextualize that this was not so long ago?
I think the way to do that is just by examining and going back and reflecting upon what did they experience at that time.
Okay.
For instance, again, my grandfathers were sharecroppers. I did not grow up on a farm. I'm first generation North, Cleveland, Ohio. So I've had no farm experience whatsoever. And then you have my parents who transitioned from sharecropping to living in a modern city over the years. You have to go back and say, guess what? My grandfathers probably did not have a telephone. They probably did not have a color TV. They did not have an iPhone or iWatch. They didn't have any of these modern gadgets and amenities that we have today. I mean, we're at a completely different place. So to go back and say, hey, this is what my grandfather's experienced, this is what my parents experienced, this is what I experienced, this is the way to do it. I mean, a really good example now is when I started college, we have punch cards for our computer system, and now we have AI. And this is something that has happened within the last 50 years, so going from being able to write a program which only had a limit of 124K, and now we're talking about, hundreds of megabytes and gigabytes and terabytes and everything. We've come a long way in terms of just technology. And my ancestors had no access to this technology. My parents had no access to this technology when they were, say, teenagers.
Maybe technology is moving faster than civil rights is in America, frankly.
Yeah, you can also think of, even from a sharecropper, how he would have gathered his fruits and vegetables to go to sell to the market right there on the street versus going to a big old super Walmart today. There's a big difference in what we experience over the years as Black folks. And I think the biggest thing is that also we have gained access to a lot. And then there's been, new hurdles trying to put up to try to turn that clock back at the same time.
Arian, how do you celebrate Black History Month?
I don't necessarily celebrate Black History Month, but fortunately, I do try to do my best to learn history as I can. But I believe I live Black history every day through my experience and my perspective. I've lived through and survived several Black struggles, and I'm here to tell, you can overcome, you can still be successful. And that's my contribution to Black history.
I feel like, I also have 3 kids and I have a huge family. So we do a lot together during Black History Month. Me and my sisters, we sing. around Pittsburgh, and we know a lot of what other people would know is like Negro spirituals. And I mean, it's beautiful. Like, it's just like honoring our ancestors, um, being able to be in like different audiences where, people had to fight to be there some years ago. Just having access to be able to share our culture. And it's just wonderful.
Arian, I wanted to ask you, how has your identity shaped your career path?
Well, again, as I've said, I lived through and survived several Black stereotypes, and I'm here to talk about and to celebrate my success. I've been through the justice system. I was supposed to be a statistic, but I'm successful. I'm a homeowner. I've been at this wonderful company for almost a decade, and I try to do my best to pass it on to my brethren.
So I'm in the housing market myself right now, and I was curious, what is the percentage of Black people in America who own a home? And I think the U.S. number is 44%. And I looked at the white homeownership, what that percentage is, and it was in the 70s. Being a Black homeowner, going through the criminal justice system, just talk about like what that means for maybe your freedom or just in general, like having your own space.
It's like a dream come true to me. I never thought I'd be here to talk about this, but again, I'm here. It's important for me to talk about, to tell, like, it can happen. Like, it's very hard going through the justice system, and it can be frustrating. There's a lot of hurdles. I'm not saying it's easy, but it can be done. I'm here to talk about it.
That's like your living proof of closing a wealth gap. Dr. McGowan, can you speak to the gap that you might have experienced growing up and how you've seen yourself close that gap, like through your own success?
Wow. My success started from being in a state of fear. I grew up in a Huff neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio. I was short. I was light-skinned. I had hazel eyes. I was smart. I knew I was gay at age 5. So here you are in an environment in which you have the National Guards at one end of your city block. You have the Black Panthers national headquarters at the other end of your block. And you have no one to talk to. You have no one, you don't know who to talk to. So you live in a state of fear of being rejected and being abandoned for years. And the thing that shaped me was that once I hit about age 12, I started to think about, how am I going to survive? Who's going to take care of me? And my interest was in math and chemistry. I eventually wound up with a degree in chemical engineering. And then I contracted HIV about 40 years ago. And with the contracting HIV, that shifted me again because I was only given 2 years to live. And when given those 2 years to live, this is what would you do if you only had 2 years to live? And my answer to that question was to become a doctor. And so here I am 40 years later after being diagnosed with HIV. I'm still Black, I'm still light-skinned, I still have hazel eyes. But these are all things that you grow up in society that you're being told that they're bad things, that you're bad. And it's not true. It is such the biggest lie I've ever heard. And the part of that problem is that I wasn't living from my authentic self, which I didn't know at age 12. I know who my authentic self is now, but the authentic self has nothing to do with any of that stuff. But it's something that I did embrace for quite a long time, and it did cause me a lot of problems and a lot of struggles. But now I'm free of that now. I'm semi-retired. I'm very fortunate to have been a friend, a colleague, and an employee here at Central Outreach Wellness to have this opportunity. So in terms of the things we've discussed so far, in terms of the wealth gap, if someone told me that I would be as wealthy as I am today, I probably would not have believed it. But it's the reality, and I work hard for that. And so, if anything, I think my biggest message is through Black history, we can reflect upon who we really are, where we came from, and not only how we can use those things that we're judged upon or challenged with, we can use those as pillar to success, actually. And so even though the way I became successful was able to change or to close that wealth gap, it took a lot of work and took eventually a lot of self-reflection in the end.
That's really powerful. And I just want, you're also a homeowner.
I am.
I want to congratulate the 3 Black homeowners for closing the wealth gap and making that statistic a little higher, especially in our area of Pittsburgh. And Kweilynn, sort of on a similar note, I read a study that said Black women were actually the most educated of like any ethnic group that there is, in terms of the amount of people in this ethnic group who have degrees.
Mm-hmm.
How does it make you feel? How do you think your perspective in medical care, being a Black person and being a woman, is such an advantage?
I think that statistic is absolutely true. I was born a nerd, and I'm still a nerd, and I'm proud of it. I used to, be a little, I guess, not accepting of myself. And I guess I maybe wanted to fit in more, but now I don't care. I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to learn, and I love to learn. And that was from an early age. In Pittsburgh here, we had like a gifted program growing up. So I was always like the only Black girl in my class. And that was a struggle, especially group projects. Because, from grade school all the way up to nursing school, I'll start by saying this. I have 2 bachelors, 2 masters. So I have my MSN, my MBA. And then I also went back to school to be a nurse practitioner. I have my RN certification. I have a bachelor in psych with a business focus, and then in political science.
Nice.
Now, why did I go to school all those times? Because I was trying to figure out who I was. It was quite the journey. I was the first person in my family to go to college. So, I was like, what am I doing here? But it took me a while, a roundabout way, to get to where I am now. And I really appreciate the journey. I will say that as far as education goes, a lot of Black women are highly educated. But growing up and going through college, and I attended Penn State. Penn State, I want to say maybe 2% of the population there was Black. And in order to get, I would say, like employment or qualify for scholarships, we always had this saying that you had to be twice as nice, right? So I feel like a lot of Black women and men, you have to be twice as nice, meaning you have to be twice as qualified to even be able to sit at the table. It has been a struggle, but it has been very empowering. When I was an RN on the floor, just sitting there, it was like, I would think about my patients, but I was the representation of like all Black people, because I usually would be the only Black nurse on the floor.
Yeah.
And, there was no room for error.
Yeah. How are you able to balance that pressure of the societal of being Black, and then the pressure of you want to do a damn good job?
I really believe you have to stay focused, because there's going to be a lot of distraction, whether it comes from your coworkers or life itself. I feel like for me, I faced a lot of adversity at every job that I had, and each job prepared me for the next. It made me just a better person, a better provider, knowing that I couldn't make mistakes that other people were allowed to make. Like, I didn't have that opportunity. So I was like, well, I got to get it right, and I want to be on top of my game, because I also find that being a Black woman, a mom, auntie, nurse practitioner, provider, right? I got a lot of roles to play. And in order for me to sit at this seat at the table to provide the resources, not just for like the community as a whole, but for patients who also look like me in a safe space, I got to do the best I can.
Like Kweilynn mentioned, for a lot of my education, for a lot of times I was the only Black. When I started high school, for about the first 3 weeks, I was the only Black in honors classes. Once I got into engineering school, I was the only Black in chemical engineering that graduated that year. I was the only Black in the biochemistry department when I graduated. I was the first Black male to graduate from LECOM. So I've
I'm sorry. Run that back. You're the what?
The first black male to graduate from Lecon.
Yeah. Sorry, bro. You continue.
So in terms of being the only one in a predominantly white environment, I had already had that. Okay, so I don't feel a lot of pressure for being black in a predominantly white environment. You know, I worked in corporate America. I worked for ExxonMobil for 8.5 years, and I was the only black in that engineering department. I mean, I just wanted to did the job the best I could, and that was really it. And then I've also worked in the public sector. You know, I worked for Centerville Clinics for 12 years and dealing with the public, a different population altogether. But and even here at Central, it's always been just to do a good job or bring some new tools to the table. You know, when I interviewed with Stacy, I says, you know, I'm going to bring a new set of tools here. And some of the tools I'm going to bring are going to revolve around nutrition and well-being, and et cetera, and so forth. You know, just the things that are not what I call medicine in that sense. They're more alternative medicine. I was going to bring some new things here to the clinic. But that's part of me. So I think over the years, I haven't had a problem with like necessarily being the only black in a place. I think my biggest problem over the years has been coming to being my authentic self, which I'm there now. And so, I mean, it's taken 62 years, but there's a lot of lessons that have to be learned for me to get here and be here today. I mean, there's a lot of lessons. So, so people who come along, you know, I just say, hey, you know, just decide what you want to do, where you want to do it, who you want to do it with, and then just go for it. You just let it go. And don't worry about who you are or how people see you, because those are only distractions.
When I first came to Central Outreach, I was so excited when I walked in the room and seen Dr. McGowan. And it just encouraged me to take up space wherever I was going. Because I think a lot of times we get here and it's like, oh, we got diversity at the table, but and you should be happy to be here, right? And instead, I was like, you know what? I'm here and I have a voice and I'm going to use it. A lot of times I would see other Black women such as myself just, you know, hey, I made it here. I'm going to just be quiet and not speak on the things that we need to do, you know? And I watched you as a mentor and you always spoke your mind, and I love speaking my mind. So, you know, that's what I did when I got here. You know, you got to make sure you're not focusing on other people's opinions of you, because they're not your business, right? Otherwise, you're going to get caught up in all the drama and the microaggressions, they come. I promise you that. But, you know, when you're focused, you're able to succeed.
So I just wanted to start off and acknowledge what Dr. McGowan said and acknowledge how crazy it is that it's 2026 and we're still hearing about I'm the first Black so-and-so.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. That being said, my motivation a lot of the times is like, again, my experience, my own personal experience. I had authority figures. I've had even family members tell me, like, you won't make it past 21 or you'll never be successful at going on the path that you're on. And they probably were right at that time. But I've survived, I've overcome, I've improved myself, and I'm here to talk about me.
How do you every day stay on that path?
It's not easy. I still mess up, but I just try to focus on what's important. Again, I'm a homeowner. I need to maintain my home. I need to feed my family. Need to make sure I'm healthy and able to pass that on.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we focus on, you know, the bigger picture. And I think how you get to the bigger picture is the day by day, the things you do every day, the habits you have every day. And it sounds like every one of us at this table has a good set of good habits. And I don't know where I'm going with that. I just wouldn't say that. I'll refer back to the script.
I would say, like, one of the ways to stay healthy and focused through, like, microaggressions and working while Black, is what I call it.
Love that.
Is to be in therapy and to make sure you're on top of your physical health as well as your spiritual health, emotional,
Love that.
and your sexual health. You know,
Yeah.
Just, I believe in therapy, all types of it. You got to do what's best for you.
If I can, I would just jump on, piggyback that and say, like, I've been in therapy for the past couple of years. I never thought I would do anything like that because in my Black family, we don't talk about mental health. You don't talk about, you're just supposed to push through it. But I don't, that's not necessarily true. We all need help sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to talk about your issues. And therapy is a good place to do it. I agree.
How do we, as Black people, make therapy more okay, even if it is just by talking about it?
I think it's by being open and transparent with the people who are willing to listen at first, right? So I always say for myself, I wish that I take Prozac, right? And that's for anxiety and depression. I wish I would have taken it years ago, right? But like Arian said, that it was frowned upon in the Black community. You know, I went to church and they're like, no, you just pray about it. Listen, I always say that God created medication too, right? So you got to reach people where they're at, but also be able to speak on your experiences without any shame. Like,
Cool.
I would say by acknowledging that we are Black people first, but we're also people just like everybody else.
Yeah.
humanizing it. We humanize Black people because I think the media and society does a great job of dehumanizing Black people. So
Why is it important to talk about Black history? You know, why is it important to set time aside to differentiate what a certain people have accomplished or what a certain people has experienced in this work?
I would say because Black history is American history. We built this country. You can't acknowledge the importance of American history without acknowledging Black history first.
and you can't like build upon your future without knowing your past. We can't move forward and have like culturally competent care with people not being culturally competent. Like, so it's important that we speak out.
My whole thing was that I think we need to bring people to our table. And when I say table, I mean even dining room table, because this is where we tell our stories. This is where we share our experiences. You know, this is where we share our arts. This is where we share our language and how we communicate and how we treat each other. And then I think with people having a better understanding of us, then hopefully we'll be treated a lot better also.
I was going to say that the importance of Black History Month and Black history as a whole is that Black history is global history. I mean, Black people are everywhere. So in order for us to grow and as a people over this earth, you know, we have to build that connection, like you were saying. Like, people have to come to the table. That's why it's important to have these discussions so you can see what's actually going on or see what has impacted someone's life. And maybe you'll understand why they act that way or why they feel that way, you know?
I think that's really important. You know, we all do have differences, but we're so alike in so many ways. And to understand that, how you're similar to a European person, how you're similar to an Asian person, like, then you can have experiences together. Then you can build a life together. Then you can respect each other. And I'm sure some of the problems we have now wouldn't exist if there was more of that. So we are Black and we have a different experience maybe, but we're not having these conversations to be different. We're having these conversations to explain our differences to anybody who will listen. And if that's other Black people, I think that's great. If that's other white people, I think that's awesome. We just want the time and space to explain, because everybody else has had the time and space to explain. We have learned about Shakespeare. We've learned about the English Revolution. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've had the time and space to learn about these things, and it's important that everybody gets the time and space to learn about these things. February just happens to be our time. How does civil rights connect to the work that we do at Central Outreach? And how do you think that appears in 2026? Because as you mentioned earlier in our conversation, this history is not so old. You know what I mean? So you can make the argument that civil rights is still very prevalent in the work we do now. And it's not some old-timey thought process. It's activism. It's actively removing barriers. It's actively doing these things that luminaries like MLK were doing, or Malcolm X. You know what I mean? Like, that work is still done today. And I wanted to ask you three, how does that appear in your day-to-day life at Central Outreach Water Center?
For me, how it appears is, well, when I hear civil rights, I'm thinking about legal access to everything that everyone else has.
Yeah.
Okay, and being here at Central, that focus is access to healthcare. because race and sex and medical status can be barriers to good health care depending on what institution you go to. Okay, so we break down those barriers here at Central, and so it's open to that, LGBTQIA plus community, which is a community that has been demarginalized over the years. Okay, still being demarginalized now. There are actually clinics here in Pittsburgh, one of the big medical mecca centers in the country, where people of color and HIV cannot get services. Yes, this is 2026. There are still places that demonstrate against Black people with HIV. As a matter of fact, anyone with HIV, even more so. So we don't have that here at Central. I mean, it is, again, a clinic that is dedicated primarily to the LGBTQIA community and Black community in particular. However, again, this is a bit more of a one-stop shop for mental health, sexual health, family medicine, case management, social services. I mean, we do all these different things out here right now. And matter of fact, all the things that we do here at this clinic, you can't necessarily get at other clinics also.
Civil rights to me is equivalent to human rights, and not saying vain, equivalent to freedom. We're all people. We all want to just feed our families and be free. Here at Central Outreach, big thing that's important to me is accessibility, just like you were saying. As you turn on the TV on any given occasion, you can see like people's civil rights are still being fought for today. Like not 20 years ago, like right now. So here being accessible for people of, differing race or sexual identity, gender, we're open to that, and that I feel proud to be a part of that fight here at Central Outreach.
I think we do a great job of advocating for all people and Black people here. Initially, I think, the focus here was the LGBTQIA plus community. But as our providers have grown over the years and our focus has grown, knowing that there are other disenfranchised communities, I think we're able to speak out and be present in the community. I do a lot of outreach work. Right now, I'm focusing on Black women in PrEP because I would say about 47% of the new cases of HIV are Black women, right? And as Dr. McGowan said, there are a lot of healthcare facilities here that don't focus on it as a problem. That is a huge problem. And when I think about Black women, I think they are very unprotected in this society. And so I do my best to be the advocate, the educator, the sister, the auntie, the mom, the nurse practitioner, whatever I can do and be visible in a safe place so they can get all the treatment that they are also entitled to. A lot of times people don't get treated or know about the options out there because those resources aren't available for the communities that, people don't primarily care about. So I use my voice wherever I am to, say, hey, there's a safe place here at Central Outreach. You can see me. You can see my colleagues. Like, you can come here and not feel the stigma that you would feel somewhere else. I utilize my voice on a podcast. I just try to be, that transparent and open and safe provider wherever I am. Because, as Black women, we play many roles every day. So
Yeah. I think what I would want people to know about Central Outreach and how Central Outreach is a community activist and how I feel like my work is a part of civil rights is, first of all, as a marketing director, the information can save lives. And the information we share in a pamphlet, the information we share in a commercial, the information you might hear on the radio, that if you didn't know there was a place that cured Hep C and you hear the Central Outreach Hep C ad that says we'll cure you in 8 weeks, that's powerful. You know, like disseminating that information is very powerful. And having our perspective, our as in the Black perspective here at Central Outreach is super important because frankly, like the LGBTQIA community's history ties with civil rights. It
Right.
can't not. And if that's something that needs to be recognized. And that I think that it's fair to like put them in the same car, head in the same place, which is human rights, you know?
It does.
And I think it's great that a place like Central Outreach has Black leadership, Black staff, Black thoughts are flowing through this place that not only has empathy for the community as a whole. When a lot of our patients are white, you know, just from the numbers of being in Pittsburgh and being in Ohio, a lot of our patients are white. But knowing that our perspective, our care is going into that matters because a similar place like Central Outreach could exist and not employ Black people. And frankly, that would say to me, like, are you really trying to move forward the community? Are you really trying to close the wealth gap? Are you really trying to provide opportunities to people? If all of your staff looks like this, you're not providing leadership opportunities to your Black staff or other people. And you like this. Central Outreach as a whole is like a healthy place to work. You know, we do great quality healthcare, but we're also, everybody here is given opportunity, so to speak. I think you can excel here as whoever you want to be, whatever identity you have the ability to excel here. And that's not granted to everybody in America. You know, it's not every place you could come in and have the same opportunities to succeed as your white counterpart just because of how you look, just because of how you identify. And literally at Central Outreach, none of that matters except for the work that you do.
After working in a lot of the facilities here in Pittsburgh, Central Outreach was the first place that I came in, and it was like my color didn't precede me. You know, I felt like my voice mattered. I felt like, you know, my coworkers actually cared. I felt like my ideas actually went somewhere. A lot of times, you know, I was just brushed off, you know? So, in that sense, it's been a eye-opening, wonderful awakening for me because, you know, I can go in my full Blackness and, you know, actually do the work I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Amen. I would like to piggyback off that and say this is the first job that I've had that I feel like accepted, like as a whole. My color, my status, economic, like people have accepted me here as like a family member, basically, and that's really cool.
I'm glad we all feel accepted here. And I think if we didn't, we wouldn't be at this table having this conversation. So shout out to Central Outreach for sure. And I guess I want to close with this question. You know, seeing it's February, it's Black History Month. What's something that, as a Black person, you feel like is misunderstood about you or about our culture? And maybe it's not something maybe you don't want to take the time to talk about what's misunderstood. Maybe you want to talk about something you're grateful for. Yeah. So being a Black person in America, you know, maybe we can flip it. But I just want to throw that to the table.
Yeah, I think people misunderstand my asking questions and being blunt and direct as for not caring or being mean. And my whole thing is I think some people aren't used to having people take genuine interest in their health and their well-being. And so now that they have it, they're actually just as terrified. And then they actually close up because they're thinking you're opening up. You know, they're opening up too much to you. You're learning so much about them, but I'm going to be using that information to make your life better.
Yeah.
You know?
I really want to comment on what you're saying about being direct and being blunt. And when you do that and you're Black, that's often misconstrued as being hostile, being aggressive,
Angry.
being angry,
arrogant,
being unprofessional, being arrogant, all these things. Which let me also preface this by saying you could be doing those things. It's possible that your tone could carry that. It's possible. But it's also entirely possible that maybe the white people in the room haven't dealt with Black people in this type of way. Maybe they haven't had a conversation with an educated Black person who can synthesize and explain to you what the problem is, how you contribute to the problem, how you can fix the problem, and it's not a disrespect to you. I'm just trying to communicate that in a professional way.
Right. And, we're all individuals. We all live in different environments. We all have different experiences and trauma, et cetera, and so forth. And I have to navigate through that individually for each individual. I'm sorry. The way you may have acquired hypertension may not be the same way as someone else acquired hypertension. I'm sorry, that one pill is not a panacea for everything. It may be that the only thing you need to do is get up 2 hours earlier. It's something that's simple. But people, sometimes they're looking for that quick fix. They're not looking to go back and see how all of this has evolved over time and how, the big word today is the epigenetics has affected your health and well-being and how that has affected your choices, So that means is that you've been living outside yourself, subject to what everyone else has been telling you about yourself, and half of that stuff probably isn't even true. Probably even more than that, it's not true. You're living someone else's lie or someone else's perspectives of you. But at the end of the day, again, those types of attitudes can actually wind up being barriers to your health in a sense, and in some instances can be contributing and worsening your health. That type of perspective.
For me, it's just been like the people look at me like I'm big, I'm black, and I must be like a savage. Like I'm not. I'm a human being. I got the same feelings. I got the same. I go through things. I have to make choices in life, and I'm not a savage.
I think it's important for all corporations like Central Outreach, not like Central Outreach, to make sure that these perspectives are heard and shared. So I really want to thank the three of you for being here. And so any last words anybody wants to say, please.
It's very important that the employees, the providers, and leadership reflects the patient population that it serves. I know, in growing up for me, I never walked into a doctor's office and seen someone who looked like me. And it's very empowering to get healing from someone who looks like you. You don't have to black explain everything. You don't have to, be fearful. It removes a lot of barriers to care. I think we can, as a team, we're able to pass along opportunities to our peers and other providers. I think it's really big that we do a lot of precepting here. Being able to make room for a diverse employee population, and just to let other people know that, care doesn't have to be exactly by the book and cookie cutter. You need to be able to meet the needs of all the patients. So
for me, I feel like being who I am, I'm not allowed to raise my voice in public. Like I risk being shot.
Yeah.
We're all going through something.
Yes.
Again, patience is important.
This has been amazing. There are so many topics to go over as Black people, as Black Americans, and the human experience is worth sharing and worth talking about. And I look forward to the next time we're able to have a Black History Month roundtable presented by Central Outreach, because I think that, like I said, our experiences and how they align with Central Outreach mission to remove barriers to healthcare, provide high quality healthcare, that intertwines with the Black experience, our Black history, our Black success. And I think this is also very therapeutic for all to the table to maybe get things off our chest that maybe we don't have time to explain to others every day when it's not Black History Month. But it is always Black History Month in our minds. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for participating, and we will be back. Thank you.
awesome sauce.
This was dope. Really appreciate it.